Joining us now on the line is our CAA basketball insider, Eamonn Brennan. Eamonn, how are you?
I'm great, Bobby. How are you, man?
Doing great, sir. Just talk about the importance of finishing in the top six. You avoid the first round bye, and the fact that there is a separation of just 2 games from first to seventh place. It's really setting up to be what should be a really exciting race in the back half of the conference season.
Yeah, a really exciting race that should set up a really exciting conference tournament. As you mentioned, the importance of being in the top 6 is massive, because if you're 7th place, then you are, in theory, in this league this year, a team with with legitimate hopes of getting to the NCAA tournament, right? You play well in the conference tournament, win your games, you could get there. You're good enough is the point. But if you're 7th place, you have to play 4 games in 4 days, and it's hard enough to win 3 in a row in high pressure situation with an NCAA tournament bid on the line. It's tough. Winning 4 in a row is especially difficult. Maybe some team gets hot and they want to play that extra game, but I highly doubt any coach in the conference will be looking at it saying, yeah, we'll take another opportunity on the front end of our conference tournament. I think most will be really, really hopeful to get into the top 6 and will be pushing their teams. And like you said, it should make for a really interesting race down the stretch, because it's not just about winning the regular season title, although that's all well and good. But for a lot of these teams, it's about getting to a certain place in the league where they feel a little bit better about their positioning in the conference tournament bracket heading into the most important weekend of the year.
Now let's take a look at some of the teams and break them down a little bit. Let's begin with William & Mary. They're still at the top of the league race. What have you liked from the Tribe? They're coming off a loss to Towson at home this past Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a really good William & Mary team, a team that has, as we've talked about in the past, with their 2 big system, with Andy Van Vliet joining Nathan Knight, has been much better on the offensive end this year. They're the best per possession offense in the league. Very much deserves to be at or near the top of the league, and one that you feel like with Nathan Knight has a chance to go out and win any game at any time, and one that is doing things a little bit differently this season than it has in the past with him and with some of the other personnel in ways that are getting more, better, easier looks for a lot of the guys on the floor. So if the offensive consistency stays there, if Knight's playing well, then they have a chance to beat anyone in the league and to sort of continue this form and hopefully, for them anyway, finish first and hold this out for the rest of the year. But we'll see.
Yeah, and including those 2 big men, their guard play, also the way they use their guards have completely changed from the past as well. In particular, Luke Lowy playing some great basketball for them as well.
Yeah, great 3-and-D guy particularly. I mean, we've talked about him in the past being sort of the go-to defender. It's not a term we use very often, but he is that, and that he will almost always guard the team's best offensive player. And he contributes. He's sort of that classic, like, new age NBA sort of 3-and-D guy, right? Not that he would be that at the next level, but at the college level, sort of where he's at, that's the role he fills. And he guards like crazy, and then you have to guard him on the other end so he can space the floor and open things up a bit more for Van Vliet and for Nathan Knight. And yeah, the balance offensively has been great, and that's where William & Mary's real improvements have come. I think they still would like to be a little bit better on the defensive end. Thought maybe they had taken a few more strides there. Have had some struggles in the past couple weeks, but offensively they're a very different team, sort of strategically or tactically than they were this year, while still getting really great performances out of their best players.
We also can't forget about Thornton Scott. The Tribe are 11-3 when he's in the lineup this year, obviously been in and out due to injury. The team that knocked off the Tribe on Saturday, Towson, there with a trio of teams at 6-3, tied for second in the league race. But the Tigers are the hottest team in the CAA right now. I've won 6 in a row. What has been a key to their turnaround, especially since they started 0-3 in the league?
Yeah, I mean, they've been fantastic these last few games. Brian Fobbs found his shot. He's been excellent, averaging 19 points per game in Towson's last 6 consecutive wins. He had 28 against Drexel, 21 against JMU. He had 20 on just 7 shots against Elon, which is super efficient, and which I think looks a lot more like the player you saw last year. If Fobbs is playing like this, then they have a chance. And then in addition to Fobbs, sort of looking like the old Brian Fobbs, you have Alan Betran being consistent. The good news for Towson, they've been getting a lot of good shooting. A lot of the shooting that Fobbs has not had necessarily early in this season, they've been getting in the form of Betran's work, who's making 38% from three. Not shooting as often, but he's there for those makes when they're available to him, which has been really helpful from an offensive balance standpoint. And most importantly, lately in these past 6 games, he's recreating his scoring. Really, for most of the year, is recreating his sort of consistent scoring level night after night after night. He's had double figures in each of the past 6 games as Towson has really, sort of turned their conference season around suddenly here. Now finds himself tied for second. It's been great work from Fobbs, great work from Betran, and a really impressive turnaround from the Towson Tigers.
And another team sitting there at 6-3, the Hofstra Pride, a very backcourt dominated team. You got Eli Pemberton and DeJour Bowie just having great seasons. What have you liked from them?
Yeah, obviously you mentioned it, DeJour Bowie, Eli Pemberton, replacing a lot of the scoring they lost last year when, their sort of star player who took a ton of shots and scored a ton of points in an efficient way was gone. We've talked about this all the way going back to the preseason. How do they get that scoring? DeJour Bowie stepped up. Eli Pemberton is as good as ever, if not better. And I think the thing for Hofstra as well is they're really balanced. They have 5 guys, not only Pemberton and Bowie, but Jalen Ray, Tariq Coburn, Isaac Conte, all average in double figures. So most often, almost always, they're getting really good output from DeJour Bowie. And from Pemberton, most of the time, if not all the time, they're getting at least one or the other. But every time they're getting scoring from all sorts of different places. Guys that can sort of recreate and replace, various scoring efforts inside, outside. It's a difficult team to guard with their size and the way they spread the floor and the offensive weapons that they have. And that's really why Hofstra has succeeded so far this season.
And the third team sitting there at 6-3, the College of Charleston, and a team that is probably looking for a little bit more scoring around their star player, Grant Riller.
Yeah, we just talked about Hofstra's balance and how they have 5 guys in double figures. That is not the case for Charleston. When you have a guy like Grant Riller, you maybe don't necessarily need to be that balanced. It's understandable when you have a guy as good as he's been for all 4 of his years now, averaging 21 points, 5.6 rebounds, and 4.2 assists a night as a do-everything sort of lead guard, point guard, scoring guard. You don't necessarily need to have 5 guys in double figures or 4 even. And really, it's just Riller and Brevin Galloway getting double figures. Galloway's adding 11.1 points per night. You have a couple guys, Jalen McManus and Sam Miller, contributing around 9 points a night each. Not far off from sort of the maybe a little bit arbitrary double figures mark that we use to sort of indicate balance. But there's no question Charleston, being led by Riller, really good, would probably like a little bit more scoring from other places to balance things out and maybe take a little bit of the load off his plate.
Then as we go down the standings, Eamonn, we got a trio of teams sitting at 5-4 in the league race, tied for 5th. Like we said, a crazy conference race right now. You have Delaware, Drexel, and Northeastern. Let's begin with the Blue Hens. Outside of Towson, they're probably another team that you could consider one of the hotter teams right now in the league. Won 3 in a row with a huge road trip up north last week, picking up a pair of wins.
Yeah, big wins, all in the final minute, 3 straight. And the keys really have been getting big performances from various places. Justin Mutz versus Hofstra, 30 points on 14 of 17 shooting and 13 rebounds. Massive night. Not to be outdone, Nate Darling at Northeastern had 34, was 8 of 10 from inside the arc, had 3 threes, 9 of 11 from the free throw line, a massive scoring night for him. And then the addition of Dylan Painter, which we've talked about in the past, since he became eligible as a mid-season transfer from Villanova. He's averaging double figures coming in, sort of integrating, has now sort of started to start games a little bit more. Clearly a talented guy, adds a different dimension for them with his size, had 15 and 12 in the win over Hofstra. So you really like Delaware's, I think, increasing balance, the fact that they can get performances like this from different places on different nights, that they have that potential. And yeah, the past 3 games, with the possible exception of Towson, you'd say they're the hottest team in the league.
And then when we take a look at the Northeastern Huskies, that's who Delaware knocked off on Saturday. The Huskies in the national rankings of things are, yes, they are tied for 5th, but in the net, they're the highest team in the CAA. They have 4 CAA losses combined by 8 points. That's just incredible at this point. A lot of heartbreaking losses for the Huskies, so they're still going to be a threat down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the metrics, KenPom.com's adjusted efficiency, the NCAA evaluation tools metrics, and Northeastern looks like, not by a ton, but by a decent margin, the best team statistically in the league. And they are, a little bit further down the CAA standings than you would expect. And it's easy to figure out why, right? You mentioned it. They lost 4 games by a combined 8 points. If you play 100,000 of these games that are this close, basically you end up just flipping a coin over and over again. It's a 50-50 proposition, and that's kind of where Northeastern is right now. I think that's a good thing. I think the thing to keep in mind now for Northeastern is that their record doesn't indicate probably how good they are. And we've been talking about Jordan Rowland all season. This is the best per possession defense in the CAA in league play, and the second best offense, with arguably its best player, one of the 2, 3, 4 best players in Jordan Rowland. And you look at their record right now and you'll say, oh, that's a mid-table, if you will, standing sort of team. But they're a lot better than that. And I think if you're looking for a sort of statistical correction or regression to the mean, then Northeastern's probably due for one. And that could be really interesting to watch in the second half of the season.
Here with Eamonn Brennan, our CAA men's basketball insider. And Eamonn, we can't forget about the teams that maybe just outside the top 7. Elon picked up a conference win last week, and then UNCW on Saturday going on the road, knocking off College of Charleston. These 2 teams right here could also throw a wrench in the league race in the second half of the conference season.
Yeah, I think if you're one of the teams in the top 6 or 7, you're looking at the sort of league standings in your own schedule and thinking, okay, where do our easy wins come from? Where can we get a W where we're not fighting for our lives? And I think you're looking at the way UNCW and Elon are playing the last couple weeks, and you're maybe not so sure even about those games anymore. Rob Burke, since taking over, has done a really nice job. I think in the specifics, you have to look at the game plan against Charleston, doubling Grant Riller throughout the game, trying to get the ball out of his hands, making someone else beat you. That's an issue for Charleston to solve moving forward, but a great game plan for UNCW in that specific game. And I think in general, you have to look at the Seahawks and be really impressed by not only the job Burke is doing, but the players, right? Because your coach gets fired early in the year. It would be very easy to sort of pack it in and give up and just write this season off, the rest of the way. And they haven't done that. They won 2 games in a row and really showed a lot of heart and a lot of competitiveness. And I think it's really impressive. And it's, as we discussed at the top, probably slightly disconcerting for some of the other teams at the top of the league who would maybe like 1 or 2 easier games on, mixed in the schedule the rest of the way. Elon, I think if you're an Elon fan, Mike Schrage, it's first-year coach. They're building towards the future. I don't think anyone coming into the season would have expected Elon to compete for a league title or necessarily the NCAA tournament berth, although, who knows what can happen come tournament time. But really you're building a foundation for the future. And I think if you're an Elon fan, you have to be really excited about what you have in Hunter Woods and Hunter McIntosh and Zach Irvin, 3 freshmen getting big minutes, showing a lot of competitiveness, a lot of promise as the season goes along, improvement from game to game.
Eamonn Brennan joining us. Eamonn, as we take a look at the top of the league standings, let's begin with William & Mary's Dane Fisher, first year for the Tribe, sitting there in first place halfway through the CAA play.
Yeah, really impressive start from Dane Fisher, coaching-wise. I think the way William & Mary have changed under him has been really impressive. And obviously the big thing is the addition of Andy Van Vliet and the 2-big offense and the way it has freed things up for Nathan Knight. That's been a big change in the way they've played. I think Nathan Knight's game has stayed basically as effective, if not slightly more so than he's been in the past. He's always been really good. But I think the way that Fisher has adjusted and tweaked some of the ways that this offense works, not only having Van Vliet as another big who can take some of the post-up pressure off of Knight, who can post up on his own. I think also changing the way Knight plays a little bit too, taking away some of the post-ups. He still posts up all the time, but taking away a few of those and mixing in more ball screen action for him. You look at his, sort of per possession usage stats, like on Synergy's data tracking service, and there's a lot of pick and roll action there where Knight is now stepping away from the rim a little bit, getting momentum towards the rim, cutting at the rim, not just getting the ball in the low post, getting doubled and having to make a play, either scoring or passing the ball. It's a little bit more dynamic. Van Vliet releases some of that pressure, and that's been really, really impressive from William & Mary.
Another young coach doing good work this year in the league race is Martin Inglesby over at Delaware.
Yeah, for sure. And, really again, like you said, 3 wins away from increasing Delaware's win total from last season already. So a step in the right direction in terms of program building and building towards the future. But I think a really solid team right here and now, and a team that has a chance to continue improving. The balance across the team, they have 5 players in averaging 10 or more points per game. It starts with Nate Darling for sure, and sort of his lead scoring role. But fellow DeMatha grad Ryan Allen is having a really nice year as well, and they're getting great contributions from Justin Mutz and Kevin Anderson, and Dylan Painter is averaging 10 plus points in relatively short time, and after just sort of getting integrated, picking up more and more starts and looking like a really useful piece to have. Yeah, it's been a really, really nice job from Martin Inglesby, and the fact that Delaware's done that relatively seamlessly so far is pretty impressive.
Take a look at Pat Scarry over at Towson, kind of rebuilding over the last couple years, and now they're one of the hottest teams in the league as we're at the halfway point.
Yeah, won 6 games in a row, playing great basketball. And I honestly think one of the low-key best college basketball stories of the past decade, and I think I said this at the time, was when Pat Scarry took over his first year at Towson, they won 1 game. 2 years later, they won 25 games and building. And now you see that building process starting from last year into this year, and really through the start of this season too, really yielding fruit in conference play. Like we said, 6 wins in a row and playing some great basketball. And really you would see, I think, Towson being already back or well on the way back to where they've been for most of Pat Scarry's tenure.
And now looking at Drexel, Zach Spiker, his first few years in the league, he's always had to fight the injury bug. You always have 1 or 2 players just decimated by a season-ending injury. And now this year, it looks like the program is on the up and up. A great team at home this year. Talk about Zach Spiker and the work he's done for the Dragons.
Yeah, Drexel's playing good hoops now as well. Another team in this league that is giving people sort of quote unquote at the top of the conference a lot of issues, particularly in their own building. They are 9-2 at home, so it's been, and that's conference non-conference games. That's all year. They've been really good in their own shop. Already a win away from matching last year's total. Another couple wins here or there on the road, balancing out that home and road disparity a little bit. And you'll be looking at an even more quality year, again, building towards something more, but a really good start from Drexel, I would say.
Indeed, and being led by one of the more exciting players and point guards in the league, in Cameron Winter. He's had a tremendous year as well. Talk about the way he's really kind of – how this team is being built around him.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's being built around him. I think building any program, any coach would tell you that the best way to start doing that is to get guards that you really trust, that understand your system, and you can build around them, build your team around them, and put the ball in their hands so frequently. Then you have a chance to build something that really tactically makes sense, that everybody's bought in on, and that can get you from point A to point B as a program.
And we wrap up today with College of Charleston's Earl Grant, and Coach Grant has already done some wonderful things at Charleston. They've been a contender the last 3 or 4 years now, collecting 20-win seasons, been to 2 CAA championship appearances, won 1 CAA title. Coach Grant's done a great job down there, and now he's got some players that are even playing at the next level. Just talk about the job he's done and the job he's doing this year.
Yeah, I mean, I would say time and again in the past few years here, you look at Charleston's sort of best players and you see them improve year over year over year throughout their careers. Grant Riller is merely the latest. And, he's a potential, sort of second round draft pick right now on most NBA draft boards. You look at, he wouldn't be the first, even in the past couple of years under Earl Grant. Joe Cheeley is, I believe, on a 2-way contract in the NBA right now. Brantley was a draft pick a year ago. And those guys were guys that, if you look at the beginning of their career at Charleston, were on nobody's draft radar, really. But by the time they were juniors and seniors, they were like beasts. And that's the sort of 4-year development curve that Earl Grant has been putting a lot of his most talented players on, and really everybody in the program. But when you come there with talent, you still get better. And I think we're seeing that now with Grant Riller, but with guys in the recent past as well.
All right, Eamonn Brennan, our CAA men's basketball insider, joining us today. It should be an exciting second half of the conference season. Eamonn, thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.